Hey, welcome back. Thanks so much for dropping in to continue working on Fernando Campbell's opportunity and documents in Docusign. One thing I didn't go over before was this seller profile. I'm still in the opportunities, this seller profile. So if Fernando had downloaded my app and had had a sign in, a login with my app or my website, then his information would show up here. And that's how he gets the guides and the instant updates through the app, is if they have the app and they have created a login for it. Without that, then nothing shows up here for him. The next step then is to create the paperwork, which, is the super fun part. The super fun part is selling the house, but I don't mind paperwork. I know a lot of agents are not thrilled with having to do paperwork. So if you're doing the paperwork on your own, if you don't have an assistant or your assistant is working, I'm sorry, not working, but is on vacation, or it's a weekend and your assistant is not working today, let's jump into how to do this. You'll go to the Documents tab. And in Documents, you're going to see several things. You're going to see pick a checklist type. So we know this is a residential listing. We'll click residential listing. This is going to pre-populate all of the things that we'll need. And then as we get the paperwork signed, then we can just add it in here, and we'll go through that later. We don't have any of that right now to do. This is also, once you have all this done, where you'll submit it to the Market Center to have them to compliance for them to look at it. When it goes under contract, then we'll have a separate one here for under contract. There's a whole other checklist. And close, there's a whole other checklist here. So listed. To get to the paperwork and to Docusign, you're going to start a transaction right over here on the right hand side. Start a transaction, and for me it's going to automatically go over into Docusign. If you haven't used it in a while, or you don't have it set up to automatically log you in, then you'll have to put in your information every time. And when you are signed in, you should be somewhere that looks like this. Docusign is pretty easy to use. Each transaction is called a room, so you might have many different rooms. If I go to dashboard, I can see all of my different rooms. And so I have a vacant land listing. I have a potential other vacant land listing. This was just a test one that I was doing for myself to play with. And this was a vacant land listing that he ended up deciding not to sell because the property is just not worth enough. So I can actually get rid of that if I wanted to. And then here is the fake listing that we're working on right now. That is on dashboard if you ever want to look at all of your stuff together. If I go to rooms, I'll see the different, all the different rooms that I have. And again, we're going to Collins Street. That's the one we're working on for Fernando Campbell. And the very first thing I want to do in here is go through the Details tab and make sure that all of the information on the Details tab is filled in as much as I can fill it in, because this is what Docusign will use to auto-populate all of your forms. And you definitely want to save yourself that time so that you don't have to fill it in yourself manually. The name here, this is the name of the opportunity, so don't change that. Only change that if you need to add the address in there instead of the person's name. It's going to be US dollars. The origin of the lead is, we'll say, personal referral. It's not an MLS yet because I haven't listed it yet, so I don't have the MLS ID. This is a new listing and it's not under contract yet. So here we go into then the address of the property. You would think that it would auto-populate this from opportunities, but remember that they're two different systems. Docusign is a different system than KW Commands, so maybe one day it will, but at this point, August 19th, 2020, it does not auto-populate. I wish it did. It would certainly make it easier. So make sure you put in the address. Again, this is all the stuff that's going to go in the paperwork. It's a single family home, so it's residential detached. We'll say it was built in, let's say it was built in 1972. Special circumstances. This is where you would put if it was a foreclosure, if it was a short sale, anything like that will go in here. Listing date, we're going to assume we're listing it today. Expiration date will be 6 months from now. So that is roughly March. Listing amount. We have not reduced it yet, so it's still going to be $250,000. This is not a relisting. This is a new listing. And then into the offer details, we don't have an offer yet, so we won't fill any of that out yet. If we had an offer, then we would go ahead and do that. And then the next most important place to be is over here on the seller side, on the right-hand side, and just make sure all of this is filled in. So make sure the name is there for the seller. The cell phone number is just going to be for you or for your transaction coordinator. The email address is vitally important. Docusign cannot send the documents to your seller if you don't have an email address in there, so make sure you put that in there. The address is just going to be the seller's address. This goes on the contract if you're, there's a place on the contract on page 12, I believe it is, that says address for contacts, like what's the seller's address to be able to contact them, or the buyer's address to be able to contact them. I don't typically fill that information in. You can, but I typically don't, frankly, because I just don't want the other agent to have it. But because Fernando lives in this house, then everybody already knows what his address is, and I don't mind putting it in. If he lived out of state or somewhere else, I just don't want people having it. They can get it. It's public knowledge. I get that. So fill in all of this information as best as you can. This is actually, I get a little particular about all of those things. Don't ask me why, don't know. State is Florida, 33770. There is not a list agent too, so that can be blank. Buyer, there are no buyers yet, so that can be blank, so on and so forth. When I have an offer and I have paperwork that needs to be filled out because we have an executed offer, then I would go ahead and fill all that out so that the paperwork will auto-populate. Once everything is done, hit save at the bottom, and we are done with the details tab. Relatively painless, right? Next up will be the documents, and that will be the next video. So get yourself together, and I will see you then. Thanks for watching.